MLB.com recently ranked the Nationals farm system as 23rd in Major League Baseball, but I'm here to tell you that this farm system could be a lot better than that. And yes, they might have some talent in there deeper in the rankings.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And yes, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals. And later on in today's show, the Phillies are in town tonight for a 4-game series against the Washington Nationals. And I got to say, not looking forward to this series. So we'll discuss that later on in today's show. In the second segment, we're going to talk about the big league squad and one guy that we haven't really discussed all too much, and that is Jake Irvin. This is now back-to-back years where he's really struggled in the summer months, and something's got to give. So we'll discuss that later on. But we start off discussing the Nationals farm system, and yes, while they might rank 23rd, they might be a little bit better than that if this happens. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money, and take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So MLB.com ranked the Washington Nationals as the 23rd best farm system in all of baseball. But I'm going to tell you that while that might be right, they also do have the opportunity to be a lot better than that. And I do believe that this national system has a lot more talent than maybe some people give it credit for. Obviously, over the years with Mike Rizzo, the big knock was that the Nationals have not been able to develop talent. They have not been able to generate a good farm system. I was actually talking to someone about this recently, and I always like to point to the Detroit Tigers. 2-3 years ago, people were talking about the Tigers being completely done and that the rebuild that nearly took a decade for them seemed to be a crash and a burn, and that they're going to have to hit the reset button on their rebuild and completely start from scratch. But now you look at them, they have one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. In fact, I believe they had a top 5 farm system according to MLB.com. And on top of that, they're one of the best teams in the American League right now. That is a team that is built for future success. And just a few years ago, they were all thinking that the Tigers were going to have to hit the reset button. They believed that Spencer Torkelson was a bust, and they believed that everybody in the Tigers front office was due to die. And then they hit that reset button. They got in a new president of baseball ops. They got a new GM. And all of a sudden, within a few seasons, this team has completely turned it around. That is kind of the goal here for the Nationals right now. And even then, if you look back at that farm system with the Tigers, they still had a lot of talent that are helping them today. Spencer Torkelson, who, yes, was a top pick in all of baseball. He should have panned out. Riley Green, he's an all-star, a perennial all-star, in fact, at this point. A really good MVP caliber kind of player. They went in, they signed Javier Baez. They made the right moves. They developed Tariq Skubal, and he's now a Cy Young contender each and every single season, one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. These things can switch, and it does start with leadership. But looking at where this Nationals front office is, now again, the interim tag is there with Mike DiBartolo. If he's going to be the long-term answer, then sure. My honest answer would be I hope that they would go outside the organization at this point in time. But I still look at this farm system, and there is room for the Nationals to, number one, improve, but also, number two, to be a lot better than what they are. I think this 2025 draft was a complete home run. I do. I think getting Eli Willits at 1-1 was the correct decision. I do believe that with the Nationals and the way that they kind of spread the money around in the draft, you got Landon Harmon in the later rounds, who's a really good high ceiling kind of pitcher coming out of high school. You got guys like Ethan Petrie, second round pick out of South Carolina, who, by the way, is already in Fredericksburg, and in his first game with Freddie had a nice hit in there. I think the Nationals can set themselves up for success, but it is going to be about the development process of this. And that is going to be the big, overwhelming question. Can the Nationals develop these guys? Can the Nationals get the most out of guys like, let's say, Coy James, who was another high school bat the Nationals got in this year's draft, the 5th round pick? And again, another guy that we bring up with Landon Harmon. Can they get the most out of him, who has a 65 grade fastball, who was a 3rd round pick out of high school? These are the questions that the Nationals are going to have to answer. So I do believe that having the 23rd best system in baseball, I think that's warranted for where this group is. Because the Nationals have done this in years past. They have kind of spread the money around, but then they haven't developed those prospects. They have not at all, in fact. I think back to, I believe it was 2021 or 2022, and the Nationals selected TJ White later on in the rounds. First baseman, big power bat. That's kind of a guy where at that time when we drafted him, I was like, okay, well, this is going to be a project. And honestly, I don't have any faith in the Nationals developing him. They have not. But now under a new regime and potentially someone to come in here and totally change things up within this organization, I do have faith that this could turn around. I don't think the 23rd overall farm system was really reflective of what the talent is in the system. I do think the Nationals have a lot of talent in this year's system. I look around, and again, Yohandy Morales being your top 20 prospect, your number 20 prospect according to MLB.com. I think he's a lot better than that. I think he has a chance, a real chance, by the way, to be a real impactful bat up in the majors. I look at guys like Christian Franklin as well, who is an outfielder from the Cubs in AAA. I think he's really talented, and he's going to be someone who could rightfully impact this team in a big way. I look at guys like, again, Ethan Petrie, a 2nd round pick at a USC this past summer. I think he's someone who could be a really effective guy. The Nationals have talent. They do. But again, the track record of development with this organization is kind of the one reflecting here why they had the number 23 overall slot. And we haven't even gotten to talk about Eli Willits, your number 1 overall prospect, a top 20 prospect in baseball today. At 17 years old, he could and hopefully likely will be a star shortstop for years to come. A switch hitting bat who might grow into some power, who already has a 60 grade hit tool, who's already an elite defender over at a premier defensive position. He is also someone who obviously could and should pan out to be a star for this Nationals team. Harleen Susana, who again in yesterday's performance shoved in Double-A. At 21 years old, he is someone who absolutely could come in and totally change things up for this Nationals kind of prospect list here in town. The Nationals have talent. They do. Even in the farm system, guys that we have not mentioned. A lot of younger talent, and I will say that. So a lot of these guys might be a few seasons away. But that does not mean that they're just going to develop these kind of really high ceiling guys. You have to go in, figure out what works, and hopefully develop your young arms, because that's what the Nationals need at this point. It's no secret. And we're going to talk about Jake Irvin here later on, who at one point in time looked like a pretty big success story for the Nats. But right now, things have been struggling. You also have guys who, again, Angel Fleece, someone who's in the FCL right now, or actually in Fredericksburg, who got the promotion as of recent. He's a young, really talented shortstop at 18 years old, who's hopefully will make an impact for the Nationals organization moving forward. Yoel Tejada Jr., a guy who's in High A Wilmington, who is a 14th round pick by the Nationals in 2024. He's having a really solid season for the Nationals. You have got talent. But again, the way that the Nationals have not been able to develop talent for years and years and years, that's what's reflecting this right now. They could completely break out, and not everything is going to go right. Just because you have a high draft pick, just because you spend big on an international guy, does not mean that they are going to be stars in the making. It's a process. There has to be work put into these guys in order to develop them. But if you do get that correct GM hire or president hire or whatever it may be this offseason, then you finally have some hope for what could be coming down the road. And with these guys in the right places, making the correct decisions, that is where you will have that beautiful equation of developing prospects, making smart, savvy moves, and hopefully thinking in an analytical, front-facing way. It's up to the Nationals at this point. They do have talent. I do believe in that. I've always believed in that. But what the Nationals do with the talent has always been the issue here in town. Can they develop it? And I think that MLB.com, that was pretty reflective of what they were. Because just by the way, the Nationals had a top 10 farm system entering 2024 with Dylan Cruz and James Wood, Robert Hassel III, Travis Sikora, all those guys, all of them who are still on this team and hopefully will make impacts sometime soon for the Washington Nationals. But thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And yes, we are free and available wherever you get your pods, on YouTube, Apple, and of course over on Spotify as well. But next, let's get into Jake Irvin's summer struggles. This feels like an annual tradition at this point. Let's have a pretty open discussion about where Jake Irvin is right now, because I like the guy. I love Jake Irvin, but how sure are we that this is going to be a long-term solution for this Nationals starting rotation? We'll talk about that after this. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they are worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there is Monarch Money, and it's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you so you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions that I wasn't even using, and canceling those alone saved me money every single month. And that's what Monarch does. It feels as if that they can control your accounts and make you feel good and see your budget goals and of course spending activity all in one place. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks, and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And later on in today's show, we have got a Phillies Nats preview for you, so stay tuned for that, because the Philadelphia Phillies, when they come to town, it's never any fun, especially in the dog days of summer. This could be a tough series for the Washington Nationals. A 4-game homestand for the Nationals. Let's talk about that later on in the show today. But we start off discussing Jake Irvin. And right now, since the beginning of June, in 13 starts for Jake Irvin, check these numbers out. 66 and 2/3 innings pitched, 80 hits, 17 home runs, only 47 strikeouts, 27 walks, and a 6.48 ERA. And to back that ERA up, a 6.41 fielding independent pitching. At what point in time is it time to question Jake Irvin? At what point do the Nationals kind of get to this and kind of say, Jake Irvin was fun while it lasted, but right now, Jake Irvin is hurting this baseball team in a really, really big way. Did you know that Jake Irvin right now is tied for Major League Baseball's lead for home runs given up this season? I bet you probably didn't know that. It probably feels like it because, again, he's got a 5.14 ERA at this point. And Right now, he still has a positive WAR, which is pretty surprising, a B WAR, I might add. But at what point in time do we really start to question this as something that will work out? We've talked about his fastball velocity dip, and it happens over the course of a season. He usually starts out at like 94, 95, and then it dips down to 91 and 90 and 92, somewhere in that area. And it's relatively concerning. Last year, he was sitting like around 94. Now he's like around 92. That's like 2 mile per hour decrease on his fastball. Last year in Major League Baseball, while I do believe he was better than what the numbers he put up, he still had a really tough time last year as well, and especially in the summer months. All the way up that through that July 4th start in 2024, we were talking about a potential all-star with Jake Irvin. And I thought the trajectory was looking up, and we were talking about him about being a legit arm for this team. But really over the past year and a half now, things have just kind of fallen off the tracks. In this season, I feel as if he has not found his footing. He had a 3-start stint back in April this year, and I was like, okay, Jake Irvin's starting to figure out what he can do and what he can't do. But ever since then, from May on, and even then over his last 13 starts, we just kind of covered all the way since June. But he has 17 home runs given up over his last 13 starts. And also, he's walking way more guys than what he did last year. He has 3 walks per 9 compared to 2.5 per 9. He's striking out guys 1.5 times less per 9 innings than he was this past year. His whip is up to a 1.379 compared to it was at a 1.19 in past years. At what point in time do we start really kind of questioning things? Because the regression is real from last year even into this year. And now this is 2 seasons back to back where he is completely unraveled in the summer months. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, what are you trying to get to? My main point of this is that I just want to ask the question, and I want this out there now. How sure are we that Jake Irvin is a starter for this team moving forward? How sure are we that the Nationals should obviously have him in the rotation moving forward? Now, I do believe that Irvin's going to be in the rotation next season on opening day. I do believe he'll pitch in one of the first 3 games, and that'll be that. Because honestly, the Nationals don't have many pitching prospects that are ready to take that jump right now. You could have talked about Travis Sakura. Josiah Gray's coming back from Tommy John. I think Cade Cavalli will be in the rotation if he's healthy going to next season as well. But when do we ask that question? Because I'm kind of ready to ask it. And I'm really starting to question whether or not this guy is going to be a big part of this future. Because I was always under the belief that Jake Irvin would be a part of this rotation moving forward because he's a controllable arm, number one. He's 28 years old. He turns 29 in February this upcoming year. He's not even ARBA eligible until 2026. He's not a free agent until 2030. Like, when did the Nationals finally just kind of say, you know what? We're going to have to start putting some pressure on Jake Irvin here. And maybe they go in this offseason. Maybe they believe that they're going to go in and sign some arms. I don't believe that at this point. So that's why I kind of, you know what? Like, we're just going to have to take our lickings every 5 days. That's kind of what it feels like with Jake Irvin at this point. And it still feels so young in his career, but I've always used this with prospects, especially pitching-wise. First year, it's like, okay, let him do his thing. Let him work through his progressions, get adjusted to major league level pitching, and that's that. Second year, I want to see some improvements. And then by year 3, you can really kind of start to decipher what this guy is and what he isn't. We're in year 3 of Jake Irvin right now. He did the 2 things that I wanted to see. Year 1, he got through it. He battled through it. A 4.6 ERA. Overall was a good season for him. Last year, I thought he took a big step up, but even then had some inconsistencies in the summer months. And now, this season, he's given up the long ball a lot more frequently than what he has been. And number 2, the numbers are not good. And the underlying numbers are not good. His mile per hours have dropped. His fastball velocity, whatever you want to say, has dropped. At what point do the Nationals kind of sit there and say, you know what? Jake Irvin may not be a big part of this future. And this may be a reactionary take in your mind, but again, the numbers go into it here. Like, this has not been a good or a quality starting pitcher really since the month of April. And if you go back in the last season, it even dates back to the summer of 2024. I'm just here to ask questions at this point and really kind of question whether or not this is going to be a big piece of this Nationals future. Maybe that's not fair because I love Jake Irvin. I think he's a leader, number one. I think he's a great clubhouse guy, and I do believe that he does have the talent. But at some point in time, everything has to click. And I'm starting to run out of patience with that. The Nationals, they should not bench him. They should not say, you know what, you're a bullpen guy. That's not what they should do. This guy is talented. And again, if you look around the farm system, if you look around the Nationals clubhouse, there's no better options to go out there than Jake Irvin at this point. There is some untapped potential there. And again, it kind of goes back to our first segment of whether or not the new GM and the new kind of leader of operations here in town will be able to tap that and get into it. And hopefully he makes the improvements that we all saw going from year 1 into year 2 last year. But now as we're in year 3 and it's kind of deciding whether or not this guy's a big part of this future or not, the numbers indicate as of right now that he is not that. And that's kind of concerning to see the regression. And honestly, we've seen it not just from Jake Irvin, but also from Mitchell Parker. You've seen it from a lot of other guys as well in years past. But thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. But next, let's talk about this Phillies series. I hate the Phillies. I hate the Phillies. We'll talk about that series after this. And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. A very interesting matchup tonight with the Philadelphia Phillies, the first place Philadelphia Phillies, I might add, in the NL East, as the New York Mets are just Metsing down the line. I mean, they are just falling apart right in front of our eyes, and it is quite funny because, again, the New York Mets and their fans talk about torture. They have been tortured for years and years and years, and they do this every single year under Steve Cohen. August and September comes around. It's either they're already out of it or they're in it, and they completely fall apart. They are completely falling apart right now. But the Phillies, they're soaring, and they did have some struggles earlier on this summer, but they've kind of broken up out of that since then. And tonight you're going to see Brad Lord against Jesus Luzardo. Jesus Luzardo, again, another former Nationals prospect with the Philadelphia Phillies. It's another one to add to the equation. He was a third-round pick by the Washington Nationals in 2016 out of high school from Stoneman Douglas down in Florida. And he is kind of someone that I do believe is going to be a big issue for the Nationals moving forward if the Phillies do decide to sign him. He's had some inconsistencies over the years and really over the past, month for the Phillies. Over his last 15 starts, he has a 5.7 ERA. Over his last 7, he's kind of gotten it back a little bit here and there. But I think Jesus Luzardo actually has some of the best stuff from the left-handed side in all of baseball. And I think this is going to be a really tough matchup. But as we were talking about earlier on this week, and if you missed this show, I was just complaining about not playing Brady House and not playing Robert Hassel III. This is one of those things tonight where you better have both those guys in the lineup. You better. And I think the Nationals will, because I think they have realized that, again, they're not going to be winning baseball games. You can't manage it to win the game. And yes, that sounds so silly, but it's about the future. The Nationals do realize that, and you have Dylan Cruz coming back in the lineup tonight. So we'll see what the Nationals ultimately decide to do as far as the roster goes, and we'll cover it right here on Locked On Nationals. But until then, you guys enjoyed tonight's game with Brad Lord on the bump, who has been the Nationals' best pitcher down the stretch here. A 3.28 ERA, 3-6 record. I'm excited to see what Brad Lord does against a really good Phillies lineup. And hopefully the Nationals come out on top tonight, going up against Jesus Luzardo. But until then, you guys have a good one. See if Dylan Cruz comes back tonight, and let's see what move the Nats make. I'll talk to you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.